without the use of hands, but with the use of their brains, in what we call the face-to-face school quiz, something that every school must be part of. It has been for quite long. Children learn, children. Led my intelligence, and my intelligence came back like spider speed. And number two, there was results, and also tell me the names of their schools before I continue. St. Stephen Junior School, welcome.
House rules. Each speaker has 5 minutes. The first and last minutes are protected. The judge will ring a bell to signal the protected time. The bell will ring continuously after 5 minutes.
Thorndike's law of effect states that when satisfaction follows an action, it is more likely to be repeated. And if an unfavorable outcome follows an action, it is less likely to be repeated. Recycling programs should focus more on incentivizing participation than on penalizing non-compliance. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to define a few key terms in this debate. Recycling is the process of collecting, processing, and repurposing materials that would otherwise be discarded waste. To incentivize is to motivate or encourage somebody to do something, while to penalize is to subject someone or something to a punishment or put them at an unfair disadvantage. Ladies and gentlemen, for purposes of this debate, we are going to focus on Uganda as a classic example of a low-developing country. What characterizes low-developing countries? Before I go forward, I would like to emphasize that both these policies are in place. So, what we are debating tonight is not what policy is better than the other, but what policy is going to be focused on more than the other and how it will be better. A low-developing country like Uganda is trying to transition into an industrial stage from a primarily agrarian stage. And we do notice that in low-developing countries, poor waste management characterizes them. For example, the Chitezi landfill that services Kampala City receives 1,500 tons of waste daily despite low collection levels. So, first of all, this is dangerous because it can cause diseases, it can cause untold defects to the quality of life of the people in these low-developing countries. As well, it accelerates climate change. And we have to note that in any low-developing country, before doing anything, we have administrative constraints and funding constraints. So, we have a few parameters on which we are going to drive this debate. The team and the strategy that will win this debate should be the one that is able to prove that their strategy will achieve a high response, their strategy will mitigate funding constraints, and their strategy will be effectively administered, which is why we are here as their farmers to come and stand with incentivizing participation over penalizing non-compliance. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to focus on 3 major issues here. We are going to focus on behavioral psychology because behavioral psychology proves that people respond more to rewards than they do to punishments. As my second speaker will explain, we are going to show you examples of how behavioral psychology has driven high these recycling rates in other jurisdictions. Secondly, we are going to talk about how incentivization can reach a broader audience of people that would otherwise not have anything to do with recycling. Because incentivization can attract people even if they are recycling for their money. It can attract these people to do the recycling work. And at the end of the day, one of our major goals, one of our major parameters is achieving a high response. And thirdly, we are going to talk about the effectiveness and efficiency of incentivizing participation. In a sense that in a country with budgetary constraints and in a country with low administrative capacity, incentivization stands as a strategy where we can outsource these things first to consumers through depository refund schemes and second to the producers of these items, these recyclable items, as opposed to penalties that should strictly be enforced by the government, yet these governments in low developing countries have low administrative capacity to fulfill these penalties. So I stand to affirm the motion, and I've never been prouder. I believe that incentivizing participation is going to work better than penalizing non-compliance. Thank you so much.
Resolved, Nantala Ingrid Kwagala, Lakeside College, Uzira. Recycling programs should focus more on incentivizing participation than penalizing non-compliance. Dear judges, before you go for anything, you look at its sustainability. How are you going to sustain rewarding people? Because incentivizing, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, says that incentivizing is encouraging people to participate in recycling programs by offering rewards, which he did not mention. Now, as we are a developing country, how are we going to be able to sustain rewarding people so as to see that we promote the recycling programs? According to the new vision of 29 April 2024, over 600 tons of plastic waste are deposited every day. And guess what, dear judges? 90% ends up in landfills and it's burnt, in other words. And that is why we are saying that recycling programs should be focused more on that's why we are saying that actually penalizing non-compliance should be focused more on, because, dear judges, what happens if you penalize someone? Before you penalize them, first of all, what happens is this. One, you educate people. Why are we carrying out recycling programs? After people getting to know why we are carrying out recycling programs, you tell them of the implications if we do not carry out recycling programs. Now, what happens after telling them the implications? You look at the repercussions of failure to adhere to the recycling programs allowed.
How effective
In 1 minute.
How effective is sensitization in Uganda?
I'm coming to that. Dear judges, you cannot tell me to do something without educating me. If people are educated in Uganda, people are able to adhere to something, how will you be able to tell someone that do this without first informing them? Actually, dear judges, I was still telling you why we are choosing penalizing people. After educating them, you tell them of the implications, then the repercussions. Now, when you bring about these repercussions, which include, dear judges, fines which can be imposed on people individually or business people, you can look at imprisonment, closure of premises, seizure of goods, community services, license revocation, public naming, among very many other things. What happens when people get to know that we have penalties? If I do this, if I do not carry out recycling, if I do not adhere to the recycling programs, people are going to be in fear. What will happen? People will respect the rules in place. Rather than, dear judges, we're looking at just gifting people when actually we do not have the resources to do that. That is why we, as the negatives of today, are saying that actually penalizing non-compliance, dear judges, is very more effective than looking at incentive. Not allowed. And dear judges, in addition to that, I would like to first define for you again recycling according to the National Environment Act. The Act is 7, Section 1, Clause 8 says that recycling means any recovery operation by which waste product materials are reproduced into products, materials, or substances, whether for original or other purposes, and this includes the reprocessing of organic materials. Now, considering this under the National Environment Act and adding into the fact that, dear judges, when you bring up penalties, people will adhere due to the fear, and they'll be there to see that actually, because I do not want to be called by the law or being punished by the law, I'll make sure that I do adhere to the recycling programs. They are going to be very more effective, dear judges. I'll rest my case. Thank you.
This is the High School Crossfire. We'll be back in a minute.